Good morning once again. You are welcome to More Beyond Farm. Here we bring the knowledge of science closer to your farm. In today's episode of our rabbit breeding and genetics series, we are going to discuss why we should not stress our animals. In this case, you are going to use rabbit as a case in point. Why, if you are a rabbit farmer and you are breeding your rabbit, you should not keep on touching them and always the animal trying to struggle and break away from you. That kind of stress, studies have shown that it affects the growth rate or the growth performance of the rabbit, and even sometimes it goes a long way to affect the meat quality of the animal or the rabbit. So what happens is that naturally nature made rabbit as food for carnivorous animals in the wild. So many wild cats in the jungle prey on rabbits, lions, hyena, even python, other snakes, and most other carnivorous livestock feed on rabbits. And so rabbits always are stressed in their environment, and that affects their growth rate. And so in the wild, most rabbit found there are very smallish in size. They don't grow very fast, and their weight is mostly between 2 to 3 kg. So this stress that we subject our animals to, what happens is that it induces some biological or biochemical reactions in the animals. So for example, in our traditional settings, we mostly slaughter an animal. Even some rabbit farmers, you slaughter the rabbit, and that same time you use the carcass for a soup or kebab instantly. That is not a good practice, because for the carcass to be converted to meat for consumption, there are series of biochemical reactions that need to take place before the consumer can get the most of the food he has eaten, in this case the meat. So meat scientists and meat experts in meat production advocate that animals that are due for slaughter should not be stressed, should not subject the animal to stress in case of transportation, or even if the animal is in your farm or facility. Before you slaughter the animal, don't subject the animal to stress, don't struggle with the animal. Sometimes the way we handle our rabbits also make them feel like they are under attack, and so they use all their energy that they have conserved, because they are in a flight or fight mood. So they use all their energy conserved to make a strike. Sometimes they try to scratch you. Those energies in the form of ATPs are the food they have eaten, and they are conserving for growth to increase in size. So the more you subject them to stress and they struggle with you and they are striking with their hind limbs, it means they are losing chunk of the energy that they have conserved in the form of glycogen and all that, and you lose them and you have to feed them again to regain those energy loss. And when it continues like that, the animal becomes stunted and the farmer will lose, because in livestock production, feed cost constitutes about 70% of the cost of production. And the more the animal consume feed without converting those feed into meat, the farmer will run at a loss. And so that is why in most commercial rabbit structures, it has been designed in such a way that the farmer does not even have direct access to the rabbits. The feeding trough, and everything are external. They are outside the perimeter where the animal is. So on daily basis, you just put the pellets or whichever feed you want to give to the animal through the feeding trough outside, and the animal will have access to it inside. So it is not advisable to always touching your animals and struggling with it. Some rabbit farmers have turned their facility into a tourist site where daily visitors troop in, and they keep bringing their animals out for showbiz. That is not a good practice if you really want to do business with it. Now let's focus on the effect of this stress on the quality of your meat. Generally, when you slaughter the rabbits, it is not advisable to consume it or use it to prepare pepper soup or light soup instantly, or even use it for kebab on that same day the animal was slaughtered. When you do that, although you will have your satisfaction, but biochemically you wouldn't get the most of what you have consumed, because there are some biochemical reactions that need to take place for the best part of the meat to be released. In other words, for the muscles to be converted to what we call meat before you can consume. So we know that in our traditional communities, we slaughter animals, we subject them to heat. Our local fowls and our goats, we chase them several hours before we catch them, and we slaughter them instantly, and now then we convert them to pepper soup or whatever soup, and we consume them. That is not the best practice, and that wouldn't release the best of the nutrients and minerals in the meat. So scientists recommend that the meat should be left for at least overnight, 24 hours, through a process what we call chilling. That is, you keep the meat or the carcass in a cold room. You keep it in a cold room. Why do we do this? When you slaughter an animal, though you have killed the animal, the muscles around the body, they constitute cells and tissues. Those cells and tissues are not entirely dead instantly as you slaughtered the animal. And before the slaughter, those cells and tissues in the muscles were using oxygen to generate energy. So sometimes you see that you slaughter the rabbit, you cut off the head entirely, but when you put it down, the rabbit will be able to throw 8 limbs and 4 limbs and hind limbs. That is because the cells and tissues down there are still alive, and they are the ones generating energy to make those movements. So when you kill or when you slaughter the rabbit, now those cells in the muscles are no more getting oxygen to generate their energy, because it is the heart that pumps oxygenated blood to all parts of the body for the muscles, cells in the muscles to also get some and convert the food they have stored in them, that is glycogen, into glucose and ATP. So because the animal has been slaughtered instantly, those cells will now switch on to what we call anaerobic respiration. And under this anaerobic respiration, the cells in there will try to produce ATP, that is energy, without the use of oxygen. And in that process, it produces pyruvate, and pyruvate is converted into lactate or lactic acid. So you see there are muscle cells all around the body. So all those cells within the muscles of the animals convert the stored glycogen in them to pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon compound, and the pyruvate are also converted into lactate or lactic acid. So as the concentration of lactic acid is increased in the system or the muscles, it reduces or decreases the pH of the muscles. Before the animal was slaughtered, the pH of the body was neutral, that is around 7. So when the muscle cells undergoes anaerobic respiration to produce lactic acid, it will lead to a decrease in pH of the medium, and that pH will drop from 7 to about 5 to 5.8. And under that medium, the significance is that it will prevent the growth of microorganisms in the muscles that can cause spoilage. Now you have slaughtered the animal, you have dressed it and all of that, but in the muscles there are some reactions that are taking place. That is what I'm trying to explain to you. The first is that glycogen that was stored in the muscles has been converted into lactic acid, and the lactic acid has caused a reduction in the pH of the medium to 5.0 to 5.8, which has made it more acidic. And because living organisms are made up of more microorganisms than living cells, once you are slaughtered, those microorganisms begin to multiply. And that's why when you put a meat there for some days without processing it, it will go spoilage, it will spoil, because there are microorganisms that were living in the system already. Though some are beneficial, some also causes disease and other stuff. So those microorganisms, because of the acidic medium that has been created by the lactic acid, it will inhibit or suppresses their growth, thereby protecting the meat from going bad. So it means that animals that are stressed will have a very short shelf life as compared to animals that are slaughtered without being stressed. Because if the animal is stressed, all this lactic acid production will be decreased. But if you go through the humane way of slaughtering an animal, more lactic acid will be produced at this biochemical stage, and it will protect the meat and to give the meat a longer shelf life. And the presence of this lactic acid also enable the meat to have better taste and flavor. After this stage, the meat goes through what we call